Hello and welcome to another Shadowshaper Duels video. In today's video we are going to be going through the Hive cards in a similar way to that I've previously done with the Humans and the Fallen. And then at the end of this explanation I'm going to play some clips where I'm using a Hive deck. So let's start this time by discussing the two exotic cards that the Hive have. And they are the level energy level 6 wizard, and then also the tomb ship. We will start with the wizard because in a similar way to how Vanok with the Fallen is sort of the whole Fallen playstyle, this card as well is basically what the Hive playstyle is. And if you don't have this card, then I would not be recommending using a Hive deck. You could obviously use some specific Hive cards in decks with other cards of other races, but I would not be recommending using a fully Hive deck if you do not have the level 6 card. And if I remember right, you get this from a Wooming rank up at level 20. So really it's level 20 and above when you should be looking to use a Hive deck. And this card's power is when summoned, it will, I should say when played, it summons one shade on the left. And I mean, the effect of the exotic card is really in the shade. And if we look at what the shade does, it said that this unit will gain 4 power for every inspired Hive on your field. So the whole identity of the Hive playstyle is to make as many of your Hive units inspired as possible, and then play this card on round 6 to get a really big power bonus. So if you have 3 inspired Hive, then this card will gain 12 power. So it can be quite a significant power increase when played, not to mention the fact that this card itself has 10. So you're gaining 10 plus the 1 from the shade, so you have 11 power just for playing it. And then, depending on how many inspired you have, you're getting multiples of 4 extra bonus power on the shade. So it is a very strong sort of final card to play on round 6. It can be, the game changer and win you the game. So yeah, as I said, I would not recommend using a fully Hive deck until you get this card, because it is the whole identity of the Hive playstyle to make your units inspired. The second of the 2 exotic cards, and then I will go on to discussing the rest of the Hive units, is the Tomb Ship. And the Tomb Ship is sort of similar to what the Ketch does for the Fallen. So when played, the Tomb Ship will summon 2 random Hive units to its left and right. Now, the way this is worded might give you the impression that he's actually going to summon 4 units. If we just, very quickly take a look at what the Fallen say for the Ketch, that has a similar wording. It says summons 2 Fallen dregs on the left and the right, but this actually ends up giving you 4. It puts 2 on the left and 2 on the right. Whereas if we just, again, go back to the Hive and take a look at the Tomb Ship, the wording is basically the same, but this only actually summons 2 units in total. So it's 1 unit on the left, 1 unit on the right. So maybe not as strong as you would first think, but it can still be very strong. And this really does mean any random Hive unit, which can lead to some very interesting situations when played. For example, in this screenshot that I took from a previous game of mine, you can see that by playing the Tomb Ship, it summoned another Tomb Ship, and also my final power 6 card, even though I only played it on, I think I played it on round 5. So just from playing 1 card, that actually gave me a really high total power bonus. Now, unfortunately, the cards that the Tomb Ship summons, if they have a when played effect, then that when played effect is not triggered. So the Tomb Ship spawning a Tomb Ship unfortunately did not mean that that second Tomb Ship then spawned a further 2 Hive, and neither did my Wizard spawn a Shade. But still, from that 1 card, it gave me a total of 22 power, by the total of all 3 cards that I ended up with. So it was a very good play. Here you see in another example screenshot, my Tomb Ship actually summoned 2 more Tomb Ships. But again, unfortunately, they did not trigger their effect. But I just thought this was a very bizarre screenshot when it happened to me, to see 3 tomb ships on my field. You can see I play my tomb ship and it spawns a cursed thrall, but unfortunately that cursed thrall does not move to my opponent's front row, which means on the start of my next turn it is going to detonate on my own front row, dealing damage to my own tomb ship. Here you see my tomb ship actually has the ability to spawn the Shade, and the Shade did receive a power bonus. And now, jumping in ahead to a screenshot I took at the end of that game, you can see my Shade has an even higher power bonus, because as I continued playing and made more Hive inspired, the Shade kept updating itself to reflect how many inspired Hive I have on my field. And given I also had the level 6 card, I was able to get 2 Shades, with both of them benefiting from the 3 inspired Hive I had. So getting the Shade from the tomb ship is very lucky and also very strong, especially if you also have the other exotic card. So that is the tomb ship card. It is essentially a way to get 2 more Hive at random, and I would say it is quite a strong effect, because as I say, those Hive can be anything, to both your advantage and your detriment. But generally speaking, for a level 4 card, you will end up with 3 units, which may potentially have quite a lot of health. They may also have the ability to, be inspired and give out an effect. Because although the Hive cards which have a when played effect do not work, any of your Hive card which have a sustained effect, such as when receiving a buff, this card will attack. That can still be triggered if you then inspire that Hive that the tomb ship has played. So given you can only have 1 of each exotic card in your deck anyway, I would recommend including the tomb ship, just because it is a good chance to get some units that you may not otherwise have in your deck, or as I showed in one of those clips, even get a Shade on round 4. So they are the 2 exotic Hive cards. Now let's just go through all of the Hive cards in total. There are not many of them. There are only 3 pages, and the 3rd page only has 1 card on them. So this should not take anywhere near as long as it did with the humans. Starting off, there are quite a few level 1 Hive cards. You can see I've unlocked 3 of them here, and actually there is a further one that is locked that I do not have. The only one of these, in my opinion, that is a really powerful card is the Hex Guard, because that is a level 1 card where when played it will gain the inspired effect. So already that card is inspired, you don't have to give it a buff, which means it will synergize with your level 6 card. And assuming it does not get killed, it will just gain power, and by the end of the game it will have gained itself plus 6 power. So it is essentially a 7 health level 1 card, assuming it does not get killed or damaged. And for that reason I've put 2 of them in my deck, as you can see here, just because it is the best level 1 card. There is also the Cursed Thrall, which, if you like sending things to your opponent's front row to damage them, you can include, just like with the Exploding Shank on Fallen. It's not personally something I like doing, but that is what the Cursed Thrall does. And then there are 2 other rare level 1 cards, which have the same, energy and health, so really there is no difference between them, which is a Thrall and also an Acolyte. The Acolyte, I believe, is from the shop, which is why I don't have it yet. I just haven't managed to buy it. They are just basic level 1 cards, with no effect. Now, as you can see, I have actually included 2 Thrall in my deck, even though it is a rare card and does not have any effect. And that is because it is a level 1 cost. And given my purpose of this deck is to try and get as many inspired Hive, I want to make sure I am playing something on round 1. Or, if I want to play a card that only has 2 energy on round 3, I want to just fill up that remaining energy with cards, and then hopefully I can give this card the inspired effect. So even though itself it does not have any great purpose, its purpose is to potentially become inspired, and then that will count towards my card which I play on round 6. So I've included 2 more Thrall in my deck. Obviously you don't have to. If you don't want them, you could just play the Hex Guards as your only level 1 card. But I do find sometimes I get a situation where I don't have a Hex Guard to start with, and I'm just skipping round 1. So I went with having more level 1 cards, and less other cards that have effect. So it's all very well and good having a deck full of cards that need to be inspired to do things, but if you're struggling to make them inspired, then they're pointless. So I would rather just have more level 1 cards to try and make inspired. Now if we move on to the 2 energy Hive cards, there are only 3 of them. There is the Tenacious Knight, who when played will grant inspired to units on its left and right. So this is a very strong effect, again given the whole purpose of the Hive is to make units inspired. For such a low cost card, making 2 Hive inspired is very good. Obviously the only catch is that they have to be next to each other, and then you put this card in the middle. But yeah, a very strong card, and I would definitely recommend including 2 of them in your deck if you are doing a Hive play style. Then there are 2. Then there is the Disfavored Ogre, which also costs 2. I'm sure by now everyone probably knows what this card does because it was broken. But now that it has been fixed, it is a much more balanced card. And essentially, when this card is played on the front row, when it is then given a buff, it will grant +2 to one of your Hive units at random, with the only catch being it cannot buff itself. However, it can buff another Disfavored Ogre. And the way I think of this card is it is essentially a way of randomly giving out buffs to your inspired Hive. So if you, just to your Hive in general, they don't have to be inspired. So if you have Hive units that need to be buffed to trigger an effect, and you're not able to make them inspired, you can make this card inspired, and then there is a chance it will trigger your various other Hive units. Or failing that, if you make this card inspired, that is a +1 power that it will gain, but it is then itself giving out a +2 power. So just having 1 card inspired, it is effectively a +3 every round, because it is giving out even more bonus. And then finally there is the Tenacious Thrall, which does not have any special effect. It is just a 5 health card for 2 energy, which is quite good. That is a lot of health for a level 2 card. I don't have it yet. It comes from the shop. But to be honest, I probably would not include it in my deck, even if I had it. I would just go with the regular Thrall, because this takes 2 energy, and there's a situation where I might be able to play 2 level 1 Thralls and then inspire them. Whereas with this, I only play 1 card for the same cost, and that's therefore 1 less inspired unit. But it is just generally speaking a high health card for only 2 energy. Now if we move on to the level, the energy 3 Hive cards, there is the Inquisitor, who is one of the few Hive cards that actually is an attacking card. This is essentially the Hive Shank, like what the Fallen have. It has to be played on the back row, just like the Shank does. And the only difference being is that the Inquisitor will deal 4 damage to an opposing unit, but only has 3 health, whereas the Shank is the opposite way around. It has 4 health, but only deals 3 damage. I actually think the Inquisitor is the better of the 2 cards, because 4 damage is quite a lot. It is able to kill Scorpion turrets. It is able to kill, other cards that have slightly more health. So I've included 2 of them in my deck, mainly as a counter for when I'm coming up against people who are playing things like the Scorpion turret. It's always good to have an attacking card where you can choose what it targets, as opposed to it being a random attack. Next we have the Knight, which is a one-off when played. It will grant an inspired Hive unit +3 power, and you can pick which unit that is. So it is not a random unit. So essentially what you are meant to use this card for is if you already have some inspired cards, and ideally those are cards that need to be given a buff to trigger an effect, you can then play this Knight to trigger that buff on the card. And essentially the same card can have its effect triggered multiple times in the same round, based on this. But even if your inspired Hive does not have any special effect, it still just gains it +3 power. So that's always nice to have more power. The only catch, obviously, is it has to be a Hive unit that is already inspired. So you cannot just play it on a normal Hive unit that is not inspired. Next, we have the Wizard, which is when played, it grants inspired to just one of your Hive units. So it's a bit of a weaker card when you consider something like the Tenacious Knight can give inspired to 2 Hive units. Whereas the Wizard, which costs 1 more energy, could only give it to 1 unit. I suppose the main difference is that you don't have to play the Wizard next to what you want to buff it. So you could, for example, play the Wizard on the front row, but then grant inspired to one of your units on the back row, or the opposite way around. I've still included, as you can see, one of these in my deck, just because I want to have ways to make cards inspired. So 1 Wizard combined with 2 Tenacious Knights is giving me, enough ways to make things inspired. Next, we have the Shrieker, which must be played on the back row, but is a sustained effect of when it gains a buff, it deals 2 damage to 1 random opposing unit. So ideally, when you play the Shrieker, you want to try and make it inspired as soon as possible. Or hope you get lucky with something like the Disfavored Ogre buffing the Shrieker, and then that will trigger the Shrieker to attack. And then there is one other card which is a very similar card in behaviour. There is only a slight difference in the wording, which is the Ogre. Now, the Ogre does not have to be played on the back row. It can be played on either row. And it's when acquiring a buff, it deals 1 damage to 2 opposing units. So the main difference between the Shrieker and the Ogre is that the Shrieker has to be played on the back row. The Ogre can be played anywhere. But the Ogre is 1 damage to 2 units, and the Shrieker is 2 damage to 1 unit. It is still the same amount of outgoing damage. It's just how many different units is it targeting. I don't have the Ogre yet. It is another card that just comes from the card vendor. So I, at the moment, have 1 Shrieker in my deck, but I would actually prefer to have 1 Ogre, just because then I am not restricted to being only able to play this on the back row. For example, if I played a Disfavored Ogre on the front row on round 2, I would like to maybe play this Ogre next to it on round 3, and then on round 4 use something like a Tenacious Knight in the middle of them to make them both inspired at the same time. But I can't currently use these 2 cards in combination because the Shrieker has to go on the back row and the Disfavored Ogre has to go on the front row. So when I get it from the card vendor, I would probably swap out my Shrieker for an Ogre. As I say, it's the same amount of outgoing damage. It's just the amount of units being targeted. So they are the level 3 cards. For the level 4 cards, they are obviously it's the exotic tomb ship we already mentioned, and then all 3 of them are mythic cards. There is the Tenacious Knight, which is when played on the front row, it randomly grants +3 power to 2 inspired Hive units. So this can be quite a strong card. I have experimented with using it. I just don't have it in my deck at the moment. But essentially, if you have Hive units that are inspired, this, by giving them a +3 power, not is it just a big power increase, that's a total of +6, towards your score. It can trigger their effects. So if you have a card like the Shrieker or the Disfavored Ogre that does something when it receives a buff, it will trigger that effect. I don't have one of them in my deck at the moment because I actually preferred another Power 4 card, which we'll come on to in a second. Because in my opinion, it was more important to be able to make Hive units inspired rather than increase the power of existing inspired units. Now we have the Tenacious Ogre, which is when acquiring a buff, it deals 1 damage to 4 random opposing units. So essentially that's very similar to the Legendary Ogre I just discussed, but it's 4 units instead of 2. It's still only 1 damage. I have included 1 of these in my deck because, again, it is a good attacking option. It's not restricted to either the front or the back row. Obviously, the only limitation is you need to find a way to give it a buff for its attack to actually work. But yeah, I included one of them. I've not included two because the chances of me being able to play two of them and inspire them in the same game is, quite slim. Given, I'd have to play one on round 4, one on round 5, and somehow find a way to buff them at the same time. And then finally, I've included one Tenacious Wizard, which is when played on the back row, it grants Inspired to 2 random Hive units. I'm not 100% sure whether this always targets units who are not already inspired, or whether there is a chance it could pick an already inspired Hive and waste itself. In the games where I have played it, it has seemed to always target Hive who are not currently inspired, but I don't know whether that was just luck or whether it is actually designed that way. I am hoping it is designed that way, because essentially the reason why I have this card is, to be able to play it on round 4, and give myself just 2 more inspired Hive, so that when I play the Wizard on round 6, that all goes towards the Shade. And this is the other card I mentioned when I said with the Knight, I preferred the Tenacious Wizard to make more of my units inspired, rather than the Tenacious Knight to increase the power of my already inspired Hive units. Just because I feel like the Tenacious Wizard has more of a alignment with the playstyle of the Hive, given what the Power 6 card does. Then, if we look at what the Power 5 cards are for the Hive, well, as you can see here, there aren't any, which is why I don't have any in my deck. And then the 6 power card is just the 1 exotic card. But I don't think it's that much of a problem that there is no Power 5 for the Hive, because it allows you to just play more of your other cards together. So you can play a level 2 card with a level 3, or you can play multiple level 1 cards with something else. That was also partly why I have 4 level 1 cards, just because it allows me on round 5 to play a level 3 and then either 2 level 1s or 1 level 2, or I could even play a level 1 and then a Tenacious Wizard. Sorry, I just got rid of one of my Thrall. If I go back and put that Thrall back in, I could play one single Thrall and then play the Tenacious Wizard, and maybe the Wizard buffs that Thrall along with one of my other units who was not currently inspired. So yeah, they are all the Hive cards in total. And as you can see, the deck I built is mostly revolving around just making as many of my units inspired as possible, and then hoping I can play this card on round 6 to get a big power bonus. So now I'm going to let some games run where I use this Hive deck, and then we'll come back at the end for my final closing thoughts. Just before I let the first gameplay clip run, I just want to say that I do think in this first game, the opponent I am playing is a bot opponent rather than a real player, and you hear me say as much in the clip. The reason why I believe that is I'm currently over rank 20, and most of the time when I'm matching people, they are also above 20. However, I do occasionally match against level 10 opponents, and that is usually after I have been matchmaking for 30 seconds. And you will notice when matchmaking, there is a little indicator that tells you if you are matchmaking for a long time, it will fill the place with bots. And I did have someone point out to me on the comments of one of my previous videos that it is likely some of the opponents I were facing were bots. And there's a few ways that gives that away. They generally don't always make the smartest move. They may play cards on the rows where, they are played on the wrong row for what their effect is. Or even that they have cards in their deck which a human level 10 would not likely have. For example, they very often have Ikora, which is not always reasonable for most human level 10s. So I do just want to acknowledge that. The first clip I'm going to include, I do believe it is against a bot opponent, but I'm still including it anyway, because out of the games I managed to record, I think it does show off probably the Hive deck the best in terms of using the most variety of cards. And compared to some of the human opponents I was coming up against, I matched with quite a few people who were playing very well, and it was a real challenge to use the Hive deck. Not that that necessarily reflects on the Hive deck itself, it was more the quality of the opponents I was matching because of my level. So I'm including the first clip against a bot, but then I do believe all of the remaining clips are against real human opponents. But I just wanted to acknowledge that in case anyone points it out in the comments to me that one of my opponents was a bot. Okay, so I've now matched against a level 10 and I'm going second. I do suspect this may be a bot player, but bot players can have some very strong hands, especially Ikora, so let's see. Get my inspired hex card down straight away. And I'm going to play this ogre on the front row. It has to be played on the front row. Hopefully it doesn't get destroyed. Okay, it's not. So now I'm going to use my wizard to make it inspired. And then it will give out its power bonus. Okay. I'm going to play this ogre on the back row and I'm going to play it next to this wizard. The hope being if on my next turn or the turn after I get one of those knights that inspires the units on the left and the right, I can play it in the middle and inspire both the wizard and the ogre. And I got lucky there that this ogre passed its buff to this one. Obviously that was completely random, but it did mean that this ogre got to do its attack. Okay. Well, I've not got one of the knights, and I obviously want to use this on round 6, but there is a chance that this will give inspired to my 2 Hive who are not currently inspired. And I'm going to play this first before I play one of these other Thrall, just so that there's less other Hive units that it could possibly inspire. That was the best possible thing it could have done, although I don't know for certain if it only targets Hive units who are not yet inspired. And then just to get some extra points down, I'll play a Thrall. And then I play my level 6 card, and I have a lot of inspired units that will buff it. That ogre is now going to attack twice because it received 2 buffs. Yeah, pretty comfortable win in the end, but this was unfortunately probably a bot player. Okay, so I've just matched against a level 23 using my Hive deck. I do like that I can see I already have my level 6 card as well as a tomb ship. And I have some ways to make cards inspired. Unfortunately, I didn't get a hex card to start with, so I'm just going to play a regular Thrall. And at the moment, I just want to try and make sure I have as many inspired Hive as possible. So I'm going to play another Thrall. And then on my next turn, I can make them inspired. Okay, so I'm going to play this in the middle of them to make them both inspired. My next round, I'm going to play the tomb ship on the front row to spawn 2 more Hive. And now, assuming he doesn't do anything to disrupt this plan, on my next turn when I have 5 energy, I'm going to play this card to make 2 of those Hive inspired, and then also this wizard to make another card inspired. That's unfortunate, he got rid of one of my inspireds. Doesn't matter. Oh no, maybe I do change the plan. This card will make 2 random Hive inspired, and then I could also just play this to get inspired, and actually it doesn't really make much of a difference. And these cards, in terms of their energy, that will give me 4 and 3, which is 7. This gives me 5 and 1. So actually my original plan does give me the slightly better bonus. So let's make the 2 highest health ones inspired, just so there's less chance of them dying. And then I'm also going to make one of these, and I'm trying to spread out my inspired Hive across all the rows, and just in case he has an Ikora, you know, he can only target one of the 2 rows. It's a shame I didn't get any cards in this round that do anything special when they get inspired, but I've still managed to get 5 inspired Hive, and though this one was suppressed and it lost its power bonus, it is still classed as inspired. So I've got a total of 5 inspired Hive at the moment. Obviously, he may do something to kill one of them on this turn, I'm not sure. But yeah, 5 inspired Hive is a very good position to be at. Hopefully I still have most of them going into my round 6. Now that's unfortunate, but he only actually killed one of the inspired Hive. So now I'm going to play my exotic card on the front row. My only reason for doing that is at the moment he's just killed the front row, so I don't want to overload the back row with cards, again in case he has an Ikora. So at least if I put these on the front row, he's going to have to choose which row to target, and you know, he can only attack half of my total cards. And this should now benefit from 4 inspired Hive, so it will gain plus 16. Oh, so I was wrong. It only gained plus 12, so it looks like the suppressed unit doesn't count as inspired anymore, even though it still has the icon. Oh well, that doesn't matter. Still good power bonus. He could likely still win this if he has an Ikora. That's probably his only counter. Yeah, he has an Ikora. That just shows how strong Ikora is. Not much I could really do about that. Okay, so I've just matched against a level 24 using my Hive deck, and they are going first. So far, not the strongest start in hand. I, again, got unlucky and don't have a Hex card, so I don't have an Inspired Hive to play, and I also don't see either of my exotic cards. I'm going to play this Thrall on the front row, because then hopefully on the next turn I can play this on the front row as well, and then they're next to each other ready to be buffed. Okay, so there's my exotic card. I'm going to play this on the front row, although it would not surprise me if he now plays a turret, which will kill my Thrall. Oh, not a turret, but yeah, he still kills one of my units. Okay, so I don't really want to waste this turn now on just inspiring a Thrall. So let's play this Shrieker on the back row. Okay, and there goes the turret. So that's going to attack for 2 and kill both of my cards. Finding it really difficult here to get some inspired cards down. I think on this round here, I need to kill his turret. Otherwise, anything I play, he's just going to destroy. And then on my next turn, when it's round 5... Yeah. Okay. So let's kill his turret. He has another turret and 2 IULs. Okay, so I can't play anything on the front row. I just need to try and get some Inspired Hive down, and the only combination that's really worth doing is the ones that are worth 2 and 3 energy. So I think I play I'll play the wizard to inspire the knight, and then I'll play this in the middle. I mean, it won't double stack the inspired, but at least I've now got 2 inspired hive. Every chance the knight still dies if his turret targets it. My only hope here is that his turret does not target the knight, so he doesn't kill it, and then I can play my level 6 card. Although I can't imagine he doesn't have some way of damaging these on his last round. Maybe he has an Ikora or just some other attacking cards. He has been playing a very aggressive deck. I'll be very surprised if I go into my next turn with both of these inspired hives still alive. Yeah, as I thought, I go into my next turn with one of them still alive. And he still has 2 energy left. Is there anything more he's going to play? And I don't go into my next turn with an alive because his turret then kills it when he ends his turn. There's basically nothing I could do about that. So at this point, it's not even worth me playing this because all it's going to do is summon a shade for 1 energy. I'm just going to play the Tomb Ship just to try and get more cards down. The only possible way I win this is if my Tomb Ship summons the hero card and then I get the 10 energy from it. Yeah, that's not going to do it, even if I now play my only inspired hive. If it would have summoned me some cards with a bit more health, then maybe, but not this time. Okay, so I've just matched against a level 23, and I'm going first. I'm going to start off with by just... Actually, I'm not going to play my Hex Guard. I want to save that till a little bit later on. I know it is our unit that'll become inspired, but it's also a very easy target for him. So, I'm going first. By the time he plays it, it should be high enough health. I'm going to lead with a Hex Guard. I was going to possibly lead with the Thrall, and then I could put it next to one of my other units and use this. But, the Hex Guard will get health every turn. So, yeah. So I'm now going to play 2 Thrall on the front row. Again, I'm just trying to spread my units out so that if he does have anything like an Ikora or even a Gwyn, not everything is not on one row for him to target. So now, I'm going to play this in between the 2 Thrall just to inspire them, and I'll also play another Hex Guard on the back row. And I'm just trying to get as many inspired units as possible and also let them start increasing their health. So if he does start playing attacking cards like turrets, they can hopefully survive it. Okay, so that turret needs to die. As much as I want to play my Tomb Ship, I think the Tomb Ship's going to have to wait till next turn. I'm going to use one of my Inquisitors this turn to just get rid of that turret. I still don't like that I have not yet found my level 6 exotic card. I may not even be able to play the Tomb Ship next turn if he plays something attacking based, which he hasn't actually. He's played Gwyn. So whenever I play here, I can only play one of them. If I play this, it will give me another inspired unit. If I play this, I have no way to buff it, so it's pointless. This would do damage, but I'm going to play the Tomb Ship on my back row just to see what it gives me, and if I get lucky, maybe it spawns the Shade. Well, it wasn't a Shade, but it's not a bad idea to have an extra 10 energy card. Am I going to get lucky and draw my level 6 card as my final one? Okay, he really doesn't want me using that Shrieker. No, I've not. Okay. So I think what I do here is I'm suspecting he will have an attacking card on his last one. So I'm going to use my Inquisitor to destroy his Servitor. And then although it's not as high an energy, I'm going to use this to buff my 2 exotic cards, which will actually make it do more than had I played the Wizard. My only concern here is now I've made my back row a huge target. If he has an Ikora, she's obviously going to attack the back row. Yep. And once again, I lose to Ikora. Okay, so I've now matched against a level 27, and they are going first. Looks like they may be using a Cabal deck. And I'm going to just start off with one of my Hex cards. I'm glad I got them as my first card so that they can just start inspiring themselves. I need to be very conscious of him putting a lot of units in a line. So it may be worth me using some more aggressive cards to try and destroy his. I mean, there's nothing for me to inspire at the moment, so my only logical play is to just play my 2 other energy 1 cards. That's unfortunate. I would have liked to attack one of the units in his line, but that turret needs to die. So I'm going to use my Inquisitor to get rid of the turret. I do have my level 6 card, although as it stands I only have 1 inspired Hive. I think my next turn I play the Tomb Ship at the front row, just to get myself some more Hive. Then on round 5 I can maybe use this to inspire 2 of them, and hopefully I draw something else like a Wizard. But I'm concerned about his front row. Okay, well at least that's not a line unit, so he's not managing to stack many of them, but that's good. I guess it doesn't matter what row I play my Tomb Ship on now. I'm just going to play it on the back row. At least some high health cards, even if no special abilities. And I did at least draw this card that I can always play next round just for some free power. Okay, so that needs a 6 unit line, and he didn't have a 6 unit line, so he's not been able to use its effect. He does now have more than a 3 unit line, so any Cabal unit he does play will do more damage. Okay, this is good. I was originally going to play this in between these 2 exotic cards, but actually I'm going to try and get some more cards in the front row. So let's play my Ogre, let's play my Thrall, and then let's inspire both of them, and my Ogre will then give out a power bonus as well. If he targets my front row, he can possibly kill all of my inspired Hive, which will not be good for my exotic card. Although he may be tempted to attack the back row just because it's the card where the cards with the highest health are. I'm actually glad he targeted the back row. That was probably a mistake on his part. If he'd have attacked the front row, I'm saying that Ikora deals 2, the Servitor would have made it 3. He wouldn't have actually killed them. You see, he only took 3 health off all of them, so that the front row, or at least the inspired units on the front row, would have lived. So now I play my exotic card, and I think that will give me enough score to win. Yes. Okay. The round where I actually get my exotic card and I have some inspired units on the field. and going second, I do manage to counter an Ikora. Counter Ikora. So now that we have watched those game clips, I just want to give my final closing thoughts on the Hive deck, and also a few thoughts about the games that we have just seen. I'll actually just start by discussing the games. As you can see in those clips, I did actually lose more of the games that I won. I had 2 victories, and one of them, as I said at the start, I believe was against a bot. That's not to say it is always easy to beat the bots. They can surprise you with an Ikora on round 6. And then out of the 3 games I lost, 2 of them my opponent was using Ikora, which was definitely the game changer. And on one of them, I could have got lucky with my Tomb Ship and potentially won the game had it gave me some higher level cards. So they were close games, but I did really struggle to get some footage using the Hive deck where I win the games. But I don't necessarily think that is a reflection on the Hive deck itself. I think that is a reflection of, at the moment, how strong Ikora is as a level 6 card. She really can be a game winner. And I have shown in one of my previous videos, I won a game where at the start of round 6, I did not even have any cards on the field, and just by playing Ikora, I won. So, yeah, that's, I guess, my starting thought is that I don't necessarily think the Hive deck is a weak deck. I think it is just at the moment, Ikora is a really strong card. A lot of people are using her, especially given they have recently made it easier to acquire her by reducing the requirement in the Triumph. So a lot of people have now got Ikora, and she is probably the most powerful card to use on round 6. So yeah, that's the first thing I just wanted to say. Now to discuss the Hive in general, and sort of my closing thoughts on the Hive. I do actually really like the Hive playstyle, and I do wish that Ikora wasn't so dominant, because I feel like this the Hive deck may actually have a bit more success if not for that. I really like the idea of making your cards inspired, and I like the inspired effect because it can be quite difficult to counter with other attacking cards. Your units are effectively healing themselves every round, and then the level 6 card at the end, it is actually a very powerful card if you can get a lot of inspired units. I do wish there were maybe a few more attacking options in the Hive deck, because the only one that you can play that just instantly attacks is the Inquisitor. All of the other attacking cards need to be buffed in some way. Sorry, just say, yeah, they need to be buffed in order to trigger their attack effect. Which again, you effectively have to play 2 cards to attack. You have to play the attacking card, and then you have to play the card to inspire them. So that's a bit unfortunate. And I maybe also wish there was like a Hive equivalent of the Servitor to increase my Hive unit's damage. Because the Hive don't have that, whereas even the Cabal, there is I haven't reviewed the Cabal deck yet, but there is a Cabal card that increases the attack damage of your Cabal units. So, I wish there was maybe a Hive equivalent which increases your Hive units damage. But nevertheless, I have enjoyed using the Hive deck, and I do think it certainly can have its place. If you are playing a more passive opponent who is not attacking you, then it can be really strong, because not only are they not attacking you, your units are themselves increasing in power every round due to the inspired effect. So the longer the game goes on, the stronger your units are getting. I think the main problem at the moment is, at the point I was trying to record this video, a lot of people are using very aggressive attacking decks, which obviously that's gonna hurt your units. But if they manage to kill your inspired units, as you definitely saw in one of my clips, you can end up with a situation where your level 6 card just becomes completely pointless because you don't have any inspired units to buff it. So yeah, if you are matching more aggressive opponents, it can be really difficult to get going. I mean, that is probably the same with whatever deck you are using, not just the Hive. But if you were matching a more passive opponent who doesn't have that many attacking cards, then I think the Hive are quite strong, just because of the inspired effect. So yeah, that is my final closing thoughts. I I do like the Hive. They are definitely strong. They do have their place. I think if it was not for Ikora and at the moment the prevalence of attacking playstyles, they might be a bit more popular. But at the moment, a lot of people just seem to be using Ikora. And if you're going to use Ikora, she's your level 6 card. You're not using this card. If you're not using this card, why are you running a Hive Inspired deck? So that's my final closing thoughts. Thank you for watching.